Today we're taking a look at every mod that is done to my EJ205. This is a 2-liter turbo boxer engine found in the 2002 to 2005 Subaru WRX and of course the Saab 92X Aero that I have. This is a bolt-on build that was done when the car was close to new back in 2006. I was just 8 at the time, and believe it or not, I did not own this car then. It's gone almost untouched since then though, which I think is really cool. I'll take you through everything that's done to it, what the mods do, and what power this thing made at the wheels when it was dynoed. Let's get right into it. The first thing that I'm going to take you through here is the exhaust system on this EJ205. So almost every part of the exhaust on this engine has been modified, and I'm going to take you through the whole system from the heads to the turbo to the back of the car. Now, the basic principle with exhausts on a turboed car is to make them less restrictive so you could get more exhaust flow and make more power. With that, I'm going to show you everything that's done to this, and I got this thing up on ramps here so I could get under it and show you all these exhaust pieces. Alright, let's talk about this exhaust. So the first thing that has been done on this car is the exhaust manifolds and the turbine housing has been ported and polished. Now this thing has stock exhaust manifolds on it and a stock TD04 turbo, but with the port and polish you could get a little bit better flow, and you could also match those parts to the other aftermarket parts and to the heads better than they do from the factory, and you get more flow. This in turn makes your exhaust less restrictive, and you could get faster turbo spool and better performance. The next exhaust part that this thing has on it is an aftermarket InGen crossover pipe, and that pipe is the exhaust pipe that takes your exhaust flow from the head on this side of the engine over to this side of the engine, so eventually it could go up to your turbo. Now this pipe once again is less restrictive, and it makes for faster spool up and better flow. So after our crossover pipe here, we go into this exhaust manifold, and that brings us to the aftermarket up pipe that this car has. Now this has an aftermarket Crucial Racing up pipe without a cat in it. Early WRXs with this EJ205 came with a catted up pipe, and those do two things that are bad for your performance. One, they're restrictive because they have a cat in them and they don't flow as good as aftermarket ones. And two, they actually have a cat that is known to come apart and get eaten by your turbine housing of your turbo. You're going to have a bad time if that happens, so aftermarket up pipes are recommended for reliability and performance on these early EJ205s. After the up pipe, we have our turbo. Once again, the housing on that has been ported for better flow, and then we go into a 3-inch catted cob downpipe. Now this is where the exhaust comes out of your turbo and starts heading to the back of the car, and once again you don't want this to be restrictive. At 3 inches with a high flow cat, this is a much less restrictive downpipe than stock, and it also retains a cat, so you should be good to go with emissions in most states. And finally, from that downpipe back, there is a 3-inch catback exhaust that came from what I think is eBay. It doesn't look like there's a brand on that, so I think it's an eBay one. And that just goes from that downpipe back to the back of the car, and it has one muffler in the rear here. This whole setup sounds really, really good, and it makes pretty good power, which we'll talk about at the end of this video. And now we're through all the exhaust stuff, so now let's talk about all the intake stuff that's done to this car. But before we do, I want to say that if you love Subarus or if you want to help support this channel, I have some things linked down in my store below that you might like. Now let's get back into the video. So the first thing intake-wise that's done here is this K&N Typhoon intake system. Now with one of these systems, you in theory could make more horsepower, but the biggest thing for me that I like about this is you get a lot more turbo noise because you get the unrestricted flow through that thing. You get sound back out the intake, and overall it sounds really, really nice. After that, we have a Samco silicone turbo inlet hose, and that is supposed to reduce intake restrictions. And after that, we obviously have our turbo, and then we go into our upgraded intercooler. The intercooler on this car is off of an STI. I really like it because it looks really cool with the STI logo. This is also bigger than a stock EJ205 intercooler, so in theory, you get a little bit of better cooling there. And then we also have a different silicone pipe going into that and coming out of that. And with that, that goes over everything for the intake system of this car. Once again, the principles are pretty similar to the exhaust. You want to reduce restriction so you could get more air into your engine, and then with the exhaust work, you could get more air out of your engine. More air equals more horsepower, so you need to get it more fuel, which brings me into the next upgrade that this car has, which is a Walbro 255 fuel pump, which flows more fuel than a stock fuel pump to keep up with these mods. A few additional little things that this car has. It has an upgraded aluminum radiator in it that's a little bit bigger. It's aluminum, so the end tank shouldn't crack, and it should give me better cooling performance. We have a Crucial Racing shield on here that's supposed to help flow through the radiator and once again give me better cooling. And then down here we have an upgraded lightweight crank pulley, which gives you better response. It's less rotating mass on the engine, and it allows the engine to rev up faster and just give you a little bit better throttle response. Other real little things, it has upgraded cooling hoses and stuff like that, but that covers the main components of this engine that are mechanical. Now let's talk about the tune and how this thing is controlled, because with this many mods thrown at an engine on a stock ECU, you're gonna have problems or you're not gonna get the best performance out of your car, so that needs to be tamed with a tune. This car runs a Cobb Access Port V1. Yes, that's old school, but like I said, all these mods were done in about 2006 when this car was pretty much close to new, and it's been running like that ever since then. And you could get a much newer access port, which I have linked in the spreadsheet below. But anyway, what that access port allows you to do is control your fuel tables, control your timing tables, and basically make use of all the mods without running your car lean, without running too much timing and blowing it up. Also, if you have a vehicle that doesn't have any mods, you could get an access port which controls your boost, your fuel, and your timing once again and make more power. Now, if you have an off-the-shelf tune, which basically means a pre-made map for your car, you need to run parts that were specified for that tune. In my case, this has a lot of parts thrown together, which means it needed to be specially tuned. This car was pro-tuned on a dyno at XX Tuning, which used to be a tuning shop here in Connecticut. They're not around anymore, but when this car was tuned, it made 230 wheel horsepower and 250 torque. Now, stock, this car made about 227 crank horsepower, so that's quite an improvement. Based on what I've read online, these things stock were only around 165, 170 wheel horsepower or so. So that's a really big gain, and this car does feel quick. So guys, with that, that's going to wrap up this video. If you want to see a build spreadsheet so you could build your EJ205 just like mine, I have that linked down in the description below. A lot of these parts are sort of old school, so I do have replacements linked for the ones that you can't get anymore. But if you go to tune this car, definitely be safe about it. Definitely get a pro tune if you're going to mix and match parts like this thing. And if you're going with the off-the-shelf tune, buy the specified parts, run good fuel, and that will keep your car running reliably. Anyway, let me know what you've done to your EJ205 down below. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe for more. I hope you stick around for the next one.